Just to let you all know, there are minor gameplay spoilers in this video.
So frustrating.
Scratch.
Look down.
What did you expect me to do?
Look down. What happened?
Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Grant.
Dark Souls 3, the only game where you can dramatically survive a fall from a rope bridge while simultaneously running away from a giant army of skeletons.
No, he's just Oh, Joe, behind you! Go, 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 go,
I
go!
see him. I see him.
Oh
No!
my gosh, you got
Grant,
run across the bridge! Run across the bridge! Run across the bridge!
Go on without me!
No!
I'm alive.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
Fine.
Okay,
Where
he's at the bottom of the bridge.
All right, I'll be just in front of the boss door.
Yeah. That was so incredibly close.
Holy frick.
Oh, I found the guy. He's trying to kill. Uh-oh. Bye.
You died?
He fell off.
Yeah, there's no way for him to.
Your first thought may be, wait, Dark Souls has co-op? And to that I say, yes. Yes, it does. I would even go as far to say that it's the Dark Souls of co-op games. But in all seriousness, that confusion that you have isn't necessarily unfounded. It's not really marketed as a co-op game. In fact, Dark Souls purists would probably tell you that co-op is the unofficial easy mode of the game. But if you've been following my channel for a while now, you would know that co-op is not only possible, but it actually can be a lot of fun.
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
What?
Oh.
My sign's down at the bonfire that you lit.
See it. You're in.
You said you're in.
I did.
Hey.
I also said seen your butts.
Seen your butts? I see more butts.
Whoa.
Where did Joe go?
You were looking
Fighting
for a butt
porter. Wow, we're gonna go there. Okay, alright.
We're gonna throw it out there. I don't know.
To review this game, I played with two of my friends, one of which hasn't played any Dark Souls games previously, while myself and the other friend have played through all of the Soulsborne games.
Joe, look, a chest.
What?
I can't open
Where?
it.
Yeah, is that down here?
Oh, I guess it's not really public knowledge that I'm afraid of ladders.
No.
Oh.
Alright.
You know,
I felt bad about that.
yeah, I was like, I'm gonna tell him, and then Jared wanted to go with it, and I was like, okay. With my previous knowledge of these games, I kind of already had a fully formed opinion going in, but has any of that changed? Let's find out. I'm gonna sort these co-op reviews into 3 sections going forward. The good, the bad, and the co-op. So let's start off with the good. Right out of the gate, this game has an amazing character creator. The game just gives you an insane amount of options for what you can change about your avatar. While you can't mess with your character to the extent of something like Ark Survival Evolved, it most definitely has been the catalyst for many hilarious moments.
Oh my god.
What do you
Hang on.
think? Is it the best character you've ever seen?
I have no words. Your eyes like aren't real.
I know,
It's like-
right? They phase into my eyelids. Grandpa?
That's what I say.
Oh my gosh.
child.
Why is your face a wedge?
Back in my day, people were more pointed.
Wow. That I am. Why are you so muscular yet also saggy old man?
Grandpa angry.
And when you're finally able to tear your attention away from the hilarious player models, you'll be greeted with some of the most gorgeous environments gaming has to offer. From the beautiful cities of Irithyll and the Ring City, if you have the DLC, to the dark and decrepit catacombs and the gnarly looking Dreg Heap, every place you visit feels very lived in, like something terrible happened to cause these locations to be so destroyed and empty. When exploring these places, you get a real sense of adventure. I remember vividly when Jared and I played this together for the first time, we were always really excited to figure out what the next place to visit would be. And I know I made it sound like these locales are empty, but let me tell you, there are a lot of baddies. It's a Dark Souls game after all, and luckily the way you dispatch these enemies is really, really good. It's not necessarily complex, but it's something that will take all of your attention, because if you slip up, you can die very quickly.
Well, That put a quick hit to you.
Ouch! My friend Jared likes to call this game's combat a dance, which I think is totally spot on. Of course, it depends on what enemies you're fighting and if you're using magic, but here's the gist of it. You kind of have to circle an enemy until it attacks, roll through or block that attack yourself, and then dodge if you were too aggressive. I know it kind of sounds boring and simplistic, but when you throw stamina management, parrying, and backstabbing into the mix, it becomes a joy to navigate the various encounters.
Your foot doesn't go in there.
Ah! Frick! There's a witch! Hold on!
Yeah, there is a witch. Yep. So if you go down the ladder and then run across the bridge.
Say your own name.
I almost died. And this kind of intense combat only gets accentuated when you enter the boss battles, which by the way are fantastic. Each boss you fight has their own method of murdering you, with things like instant kills, AoEs, dashes, and combos. All of these things you need to learn on the fly, while also trying to stay alive. Improvisation is the key to fighting any boss in Dark Souls 3, in which any decision you make could be your downfall. You need to make calculated risks for when to go in for a strike, or for when to attempt a health regen. What's great about all of this is even though this game is very linear, all the things that I listed make this game incredibly replayable. Like one of the DLC bosses I love to revisit still kicks my butt even though I've beaten him at least 3 times in separate playthroughs. The cherry on top is that while there is definitely a story with some pretty deep lore, it most assuredly does not waste your time and it stays the frick out of your way. I know that might sound like a weird thing to say as a good thing, but when I'm playing with friends, I definitely don't care about the story. But if you do find it interesting, it's still there if you want to seek it out. That seems like a pretty freaking good game to me. Well, we haven't talked about the bad yet. And to start that off, we're going to talk about something that is and isn't a problem. It's kind of a mix of the two. A staple of the Dark Souls series is how it explains only the bare minimum of how the game works. So basically what I'm saying is you'll be looking through wiki articles for a lot of your playthrough if you and your friends have never played the Souls series before. This is a negative if you think the game should tell you everything you need to know, but it's a positive if you like the sense of discovery. Okay, enough of the sorta bad, let's get into the meat of it. Invasions are a thing that exist. Jared keeps trying to convince me that it's a good mechanic, but I just have too many problems with it. To give you a little context, you have to be something called Embered in order to play multiplayer. This allows for your friends to be able to join your world so you can play together, but it also makes it possible for people to invade your world to try and kill you. On paper, it kind of sounds interesting. Like, in order to shake up the gameplay, let's throw in some real people as enemies in order to keep the player on their toes. But in practice, it's just really annoying. It halts all your progress in order to dispatch your newfound enemy, which in some cases can take a really long time. As you'll find, people are jerks. There are a lot of cowardice tactics that invaders implement in order to get a leg up on you. For instance, because an invader can stay in your world for as long as they want, so long as they're alive, and the fact that the NPC enemies don't attack invaders, they usually run away towards a group of enemies and wait there for you to come after them. What a freaking pansy. Oh.
Did he die?
Make sure you save that.
Okay.
Mark that down.
You can turn this into a waiting game as a player, but you'd just be wasting your time. So this interaction just turns into a tedious chase, and 50% of the time, you'll just end up dead anyway. It's really just a frustrating situation all around, and it really bogs the pacing of the game down. And what makes invasions even more frustrating is that the way to play with your friends is confusing, to say the least. I'll talk about it a little bit more in depth in the co-op section of this review, but just know it's not as simple as just joining your friend's session. And that's kind of a theme when it comes to this game. It's rarely ever simple. It's not as though the complicated nature of the game makes it fun to learn, it's mostly just confusing and a waste of time. You'll probably find yourself saying, why is it set up like this, at least once or twice in your playthrough. And as a final note, the end boss for the base game is terrible, so if you want to get a better ending to your playthrough, I recommend getting at least the Ring City DLC.
Fairy time.
I wish I had that clip, Grant. I was playing against this Inkling.
Oh, and that's it. We did it, guys. Wow, that's it. That's the game. We're done. We did it, Reddit. Yep.
Wait, please don't tell me that's actually the end of the main story.
No, that's it. I mean, we could like, if you want to, you could buy the DLC and we still have more game to play.
Wait, no. That's actually the last boss of the game.
That's actually the last boss.
That is actually the last. What?
Yeah.
This game doesn't have the best end boss.
No, it doesn't.
That was actually the last boss of this game.
Yeah.
After all that suffering, after Gundyr and the big tree guy and the blade dancer and the lightning lord or whatever.
Yep.
That's the last boss.
Yep.
Thanks, Dark Souls. You don't necessarily need to get the DLC, which there are 2 of, but if you want to play through the best area in the game, you're gonna need to get on that. All right, we've talked about the good, we've talked about the bad, now let's talk about the co-op. And what I mean by that is more of the co-op experience, how it works, and how you can actually just get in there and play with your friends. Like I said before, it's not exactly simple, but once you get it down, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. First thing that you should note is that in order to play anything multiplayer, you'll need to use a consumable item called an ember. Yes, you heard right, it's a consumable. There's a limited number of this item that you can find around the map, which is concerning, but you can also get them by helping other players beat bosses, and some enemies drop them too. So if you end up running out of them, just help some other randos with their boss fights, or look up what enemies drop them and get grinding. But you'll notice that the embers don't do anything but turn on multiplayer. And it also increases your max health temporarily, but that's kind of irrelevant. In order to get into someone else's world, you'll need something called the White Sign Soapstone. This will place a little etching on the ground of every embered player in your server. You interact with those signs to summon someone. It's important to note that if you want to get into somebody else's game, you don't need to be embered, just the person that will be doing the summoning. But before you start summoning your friends, I recommend turning on a password. This is kind of like setting up your own server, so if you have multiple people who have the same password that match, it kind of makes their own session so nobody else can interfere. So come up with a unique password, make sure everyone puts it in, and get summoning.
Joe ran off already.
Probably.
Joe, don't.
Don't die. Do not die.
Don't do it.
I was
You're in a room with 1,700 enemies.
Get out of there. What are you doing, Joe?
I'm trying to, but they're in the way.
Joe!
You're in the way.
We weren't.
You blocked my path.
No, that big dude was there.
I was being like, Joe, no!
Okay, we should maybe like kill the slugs.
Working on it.
Okay. Use anything lightning if you have
Mr.
it.
Easy Peasy.
I don't.
Hey.
You should get some.
I can turn into a chair.
I see the skills that you bring.
Yes. One last thing I should tell you is that when you get through an area with your phantom friend, you only got through that area for you. Progress doesn't carry over to the phantoms you play with. So effectively, you'll need to play through each area the same number of times that you have people in your group. Which brings me to my recommended setup for playing this in co-op. The hard max amount of players you can have in your session is 4 people, but there's also a soft max of 3 because for whatever reason, some areas only allow for 3 people. But that kind of doesn't really matter anyway because in my opinion, the best way to play this is with just 2 people. It's also preferable that both of you have never played the game before because it keeps that sense of discovery while keeping replaying areas to a minimum. You could do what we did and play with 3 people, but honestly, it just kind of makes the game way too easy.
Is that
I'll bring that up for you.
How did this happen?
I don't know how that happened. Looking at the whole package, Dark Souls 3 is an incredible experience. It does have its problems, absolutely, but I think the amount of fun that you can have with it far outweighs the negatives. The sense of discovery, the beautiful environments, the amazing combat, the hilarious character creator, I think just creates an unforgettable experience that any co-op player should play. So as a co-op game, should you play Dark Souls 3? Yes, 100%. Go, just go. What are you waiting? Just go do it right now. I'm TheAmazinggap. Thanks for watching. Also, Joe, I would never say this in a normal situation, but we are recording. So, swearage, keep it to a minimum.
Let's cut it out.
Mother.